Try that again. Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast with myself, Andrew Musgrove and Aaron Stokes. It is the Monday show. Plenty to discuss. How we doing, Aaron? You well?
Yeah, very well. Good weekend. And yeah, Monday show on a Monday. We're on a roll, I think. Is that 2 or 3 in a row?
We
Two in a
are.
row?
Yeah, 2 in a row. I did forget to add us to the studio to begin with there.
Yeah.
though. So if you saw a blank screen, I do apologise, but we are live and with you now. If you'd like to discuss anything to do with Newcastle United, pop your thoughts into the comments. And if you listen later on the podcast, remember to subscribe and leave us any comments across social media. Hello to Les, who's popped straight in the comments. Afternoon, all. She says hello to you. And we're going to start, Aaron, with, I think, just a happy story, a lovely story. And it's the man behind me on the green screen, Joelinton there. Look at his lovely face. Not only his debut for his country, Brazil, but also a goal to go along with it. And I think everybody to do with Newcastle United is just so made up for the guy.
Yeah, I mean, I went on Twitter on Saturday night and it was just like a big collective of proud moms and dads. I saw Newcastle fans say that they were crying after what they'd witnessed. I mean, it was just, the redemption arc is complete, a fairy tale debut for him. And I think, there's not many players out there that are more deserving of sort of an ending like that.
Yeah, fantastic to see him, especially from where he's come from to where he is. I think, when fathers put a bet on their newborn baby playing for their country,
Yeah,
I think he would have got better odds of that happening when he was a child than you would have done Joelinton in his first season at Newcastle playing for his country. It was that bad, wasn't it?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think if if we go back to that, the first couple of months and maybe the first season when he signed, shots hitting his own head, didn't look like a striker, didn't really look like a footballer, to be honest. Yeah, it's just credit to him, the transformation, credit to Eddie Howe for the work that he's done with him and finding him this new role. And yeah, really, really good to see that he didn't just, get the call up, but he actually, had a really, really good game for Brazil.
Well, Les has taken the words right out of my mouth there. Joelinton epitomises where hard work and commitment can get you. And I think that just sums it up absolutely perfectly because he just knuckled down. There was that game, wasn't there, in the cup against a League 1 or 2 side. I can't for the life of me remember who it was against. But I remember Robbie Savage was the co-commentator, and you could hear the abuse that Joelinton was getting from the stands. It was away. Someone will tell us who it was
Rochdale,
against.
I feel like maybe is the one that stood out.
And for him to bounce back from that and then to become what he has done today, it is a testament of spirit and, as Les says, hard work and commitment as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, the graft he's put in, on and off the pitch, he's physically so much better now. He's fitter. He's, much more intelligent as a footballer. And look, we've just got to hope that he can find another level for Newcastle next season.
I mean, look at the players he was with on Saturday or Sunday, whenever it was, when I can't remember what day it was. Saturday, wasn't it? Look at the players he was in the team with.
I mean, Vinny Jr., Casemiro, it was great to see him, I know he didn't play alongside Bruno. Great to see him come off for Bruno and have that little embrace with him. He's just playing on, like you say, the highest level. I mean, the aim now is to try and keep it going. I mean, Ramon Menezes, the interim manager for Brazil, was full of praise for him after the game, which was really good to see. It didn't really feel like he was there on, just as a token gesture. He felt like the interim manager really does appreciate him. The only worry is if that a new manager comes in, there's lots of rumours about Ancelotti potentially taking over the Brazil job. He's got to now keep it up to make sure that, next time the World Cup and the Copa America comes round, he's still in the squad.
But I mean, just be playing in the midfield. Obviously, he was signed Newcastle as a number 9. It wasn't working. He played out on the left, but here he is playing as a midfield 3, where he plays for Newcastle as well. And he looks like he's played there all his life, but in reality, it's been 18 months.
Yeah, and I think considering he was signed as a striker and not just a striker, £40 million attacking player, his defensive work in midfield is quite ridiculous. He looks, as you say, like he's been playing there for years. His positioning, both going forward and the back. I mean, look, I would hate to play against him. He's an absolute mad mountain.
What do you reckon Bruno's thinking? Bruno's been in and around that Brazil squad, can't seem to get a run of games, and in comes Joelinton for his first. I mean, he'll be over the moon for him.
He'll be over the moon. Look, we know how close they are. They know that they're best pals and whatnot. I'm sure there will be nothing but happiness from Bruno's part. And look, Bruno's been there and done it. He's been in and around the squad for 3 or 4 years. He knows, he's a little bit of the furniture now. But I think it's just good to have them both together in the team.
Yeah, so he grabbed a goal. He lasted about 65 minutes, and then, as Aaron says, he was replaced by Bruno. A very easy goal by all accounts, but in the right position. Still got to put that in the back of the net. Some would say Joelinton of old skies that into the stands, even from 2 or 3 yards out.
Yeah, well, our chief writer, Lee Ryder, wrote a piece about Joelinton on Sunday morning and made that point exactly. He remembers Rochdale away in the FA Cup where Joelinton put one over the bar from a yard, and, the Joelinton of old might have done that, but the Joelinton you certainly won't.
Yeah, fantastic to see. And shall we give our listeners a bit of an exclusive on Joelinton? Are you ready, dear listeners? Aaron's confused as well. I haven't shared this with Aaron, but the winner of the Chronicles Player of the Season is Joelinton.
Yeah.
We asked you guys to vote, and you did in your thousands. And the winner is Newcastle's number 7, Mr. Joelinton. He was my pick as well. Your pick?
Was my pick, yeah.
Well, I'm sure you changed your pick like the days of the week.
I probably do, to be fair. You know how I like to sit on the fence, but I don't think anybody can disagree with Joelinton and get it. I think we always mention about how the fact 6 or 7 or 8 players probably could have won it, given how good the group was this season. But I think nobody could take it away from Joelinton.
Yeah, thousands picked Joelinton. Let us know in the comments if you agree with that result. And I think you've mentioned there, the task isn't just to keep it going for Brazil, it's to keep it going for Newcastle United. And I've mentioned plenty of times, I've always felt that it's going to end. It has to end. He can't keep this up. He can't keep becoming or keep going as this midfield enforcer who rattles everyone and anyone. That's Joelinton telling me he can do. But he has done, and he will do. I think we're past the stage now where we have to worry about Joelinton's form tailing off.
Oh, well past it. I remember being, sat on this podcast with you, start of last season, maybe July, August, saying, I just don't think it can continue. No, surely he can't keep this run of form up. And actually, he's taking it up a level. Now, next season's going to be a different kettle of fish. You look at the players that they're looking for, centre midfield, the players that are being linked, huge names, and all those midfield players that have played there this season are all of a sudden going to be fighting for their places, and Joelinton's one of them. If he all of a sudden has a bad patch, a bad couple of weeks, there's no room for sentiment, and he'll be out with that team.
And to kind of phrase says, well done to everyone, the true player of the season. Yeah, I think it's just a marker of how far he's come to what he is, and then, like we said, just maintaining that form week in, week out, because I think Newcastle do look worse when he's not in the side. And it is interesting you mentioned the players have been linked to in the position Joelinton plays, and we're going to talk about quite a few of them towards the end of the show. But I think if you'd asked Eddie Howe, if you'd asked pretty much any Newcastle United fan whether Joelinton would A, be in the starting 11, and B, be in that role, if you'd asked him the start of the beginning of last season, many probably wouldn't have believed you if you'd said he's going to be a really key part of this team.
He'd improved massively, hadn't been, as you say, at the start of the season. There was still maybe minor niggling doubts about whether he could do it. Is he still going to be a part of this sort of new revolution of Newcastle? Is he still going to be here in and around the first team 2 or 3 seasons? And I think that was still up in the air. Now, as you say, they look so much worse without him. A lot less balance. His defensive work is really, really missed, especially, when Dan Burns playing. And yeah, look, he's got to keep it up. But I think now, there's no denying he's one of the first names on the team sheet.
Oh, without a doubt. It's his strength. And it's, it's that little needle that he's got as well. Like he always looked like he was scared of his own shadow. But under Eddie Howe, he's become someone, I think, who realizes the benefit of his own strength. And I tell you what, you do not want to get on the wrong side of him.
That's one of the best parts of it. One of the more underrated parts of his game is actually, in that team that Newcastle want to be, where they're upsetting the opposition and they're, maybe being, good at game management. Joelinton is actually one of the best. We saw it at Arsenal at the Emirates in January. He really, really riled them up. He's always up for a fight. He'll always jump in, to defend his teammates, and that's what you want, a little bit of needle in the middle.
I think Casado was probably still waking up in the middle of the night after Joelinton was going to go from against Brighton. Billy asks, how much would Joelinton cost now, do you think?
A lot more than 40 million. And look, this is the thing. You won't hear me doing this often on this podcast, but Mike Ashley deserves a lot of credit because he bought Joelinton for 40 million, thinking we could potentially sell him on for more money. And look, it probably won't be in the way Mike Ashley imagined it, but if Newcastle ever do sell him, I think they're going to get a lot more than 40 million for him.
Rafa Benitez didn't want him.
Exactly, yeah.
But didn't want him as a centre forward.
Yeah. Look, Steve, Bruce and Ashley to deserve some credit. Maybe not Bruce, but...
I tell you who deserves the most credit, Kieran Clark. So thank you, Kieran.
Yeah, thank you for that red card.
Brilliant to see Joelinton get the goal for his country, and long may his form continue. He was replaced by Bruno, who was involved in the fourth goal for Brazil, which was a penalty. He played the ball back into the box, and the Brazilian forward went down under the challenge. I didn't think it was a penalty myself, but good to see Bruno getting involved and just showing what he can do as well.
Yeah, good to see that he's still in around the team, still got a very, very big part to play. And as I said at the top of the show, I think just having the two of them there, really close pals, it'll have been an absolutely fantastic achievement for them. And Joelinton was Bruno was the first one on social media yesterday to congratulate his good pal. So yeah, just good to see that balance that they've got.
Phillips says Clark sending off created a monster. Darren says Joelinton, the legend, happy to see him score on his debut. Yeah, I think everyone's just proper over the moon. I'm sure he's had a text or two from his Newcastle United teammates as well. Also on international duty, we had Kieran Trippier, 90 minutes versus Malta. He switched positions a couple of times, just doing what Kieran Trippier does.
Yeah, leading from the front as always. Really good display from him. I know it was against, a Malta team that probably aren't up to scratch. But look, yeah, still good to see him get minutes. Southgate, as we know, really, really rates him. I like the fact that he can also play at left back for England. I know he hasn't really done it at Newcastle, but it's a good option to have further down the line. And yeah, just good to see him and Wilson both being involved.
Yeah, Callum Wilson comes off the bench on the hour mark, grabs the penalty on the 83rd minute. Again, very questionable penalty, but Callum Wilson's got to put that away. And great to see him amongst the goals.
Yeah, got some trivia for you.
Go on then.
Shoes on the other foot. First Newcastle player to score for England since
2007.
Oh, here we go.
You're going to give me the player?
No, I was going to ask you. There you go.
Michael Owen? Yeah. Easy, mate. This isn't my first rodeo, I am the quiz master, so there we go.
Catch you out there.
But yeah, I mean, I think that'll, again, not that he needed his confidence boosting, but obviously it's just a brilliant feeling to score for your country, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, definitely. And he had that World Cup, had a couple of good little cameo appearances, and then obviously his Newcastle form tailed off. But I think that'll give him, that'll do him the world of good to score, even if it was, from the spot against a team like Malta.
We've got a few people in the comments asking about a rumour about Bruno, and it is a rumour that he's going to be part exchange with Barcelona for Rafinha doing the rounds this afternoon. Well, I don't think that's going to happen at all. Bruno very happy at Newcastle. Newcastle will not want to sell him, don't want to sell him. He is a Newcastle United player, got Champions League, talks of a new contract. Rafinha's also said he doesn't want to leave Barcelona. So that one, I'm willing to bet my bottom dollar is an absolute no-go.
Feels like an absolute non-starter, doesn't it? I mean, for all the reasons you just mentioned, and the fact that Bruno is, on the cusp of signing a new deal. Yeah, it's a ludicrous story. I think 30 million in Bruno for Rafinha, it just doesn't make any sense.
No, Newcastle looking to build the team around star players, and Bruno is definitely one of those. Unless he decides he wants to go, Newcastle are definitely not cashing in, which is great to see, because that's the Newcastle of now, not the Newcastle of old, who probably would cash in if a cheeky little 60-70 million pound bid came in.
Yeah, back in the day, I think you'd be snapping the hand off. But now, as you say, they're going to build a team around Bruno, undoubtedly. Yeah.
Now, one of the other players who played for England was James Maddison, and he did impress. Obviously, Newcastle very interested in him, as are Spurs, and that's where the chase is leading towards today. That Spurs apparently have jumped ahead of Newcastle in the pecking order for James Maddison. Rumours that he prefers a move to London. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a little aspect of this story which refuses to go away, and that is, a couple of different reports have came out about the fact that he would prefer a move down south. All I'll say on it is, I think if you look at what's happened over the last week, just in isolation, very, very visibly close with Callum Wilson. Wilson having a little word in his ear when they left the pitch. Obviously, that social media post last week, Maddison knows exactly what he's doing, posting a photo of Callum Wilson on his Instagram. I just think Tottenham at the minute, are they a club that you could see people really thinking, is that London pull enough to keep you away from Newcastle? I'm not too sure. And I think, anybody you speak to, Newcastle are confident that if they need to get a deal done, they will. It might not be their priority position, but I think there's a confidence there that if Leicester lower their demands, they can get the deal done.
You don't need to sell Newcastle United. You shouldn't need to sell Newcastle United to any player. Before it was all about the passion of the fan base and what the size of this club could become. But now they've got Champions League football. They've got something to show for it. And if you, as I said the other week about Kalvin Phillips, if you're not persuaded at the first call, then if it was me, Newcastle move on and they go and find someone who wants to play for this club, because you saw with the players they have signed, they've bought right into it, not just playing for Newcastle United, but the city, the culture, everything. And if you're having to be persuaded to join Newcastle United, who are going to embark on a Champions League tour next season, then I'm sorry, are you the player for Newcastle United?
I know that that's your mantra, and you keep mentioning it on the pod that if a player doesn't want to join, don't force it. But I think sometimes, as the window goes on and then maybe need reinforcements, I've got no qualms with Newcastle going back in for players that maybe weren't convinced first time around. And I know that goes completely against what you keep banging the drum about on here, but I don't know. I just think sometimes players might just need a little bit of persuading, and that's absolutely fine.
So if you're Callum Wilson, you're Kieran Trippier, what are you saying to James Maddison?
Look, I think they don't need to say it a lot, if I'm completely honest. I think James Maddison was at St James's Park last month when Newcastle United secured Champions League football. All he needed to do really was look around that stadium. You won't get many places like that. I think Maddison will know that. For me, and look, I'm not in James Maddison's head. I don't know. Maybe he does want to move to the bright lights of London. I've lived there myself. Fantastic city. But I just think you've got so many pros on this Newcastle list now. Champions League football. Your England mates are there. A club on the up. You're going to join and be an instant favourite. Or, you move to London and you join a club that don't have European football. They're a little bit of a mess.
It's a rebuilding job.
You've
got a manager who may or may not cut it in the Premier League.
Yep, exactly. You've got a lot of this and bust. And I mean, Tottenham as a club got a fantastic stadium. They've hired some very, very good managers over the years who just, for whatever reason, can't get a tune out of it. They've got a good squad, and I've no doubt they'll be back next season. But I just think, and this is without having the black and white, tinted spectacles on, I just think Newcastle's just such a bigger draw at the minute.
We suspect that we'll know sooner rather than later about James Maddison's future once the international games are done and dusted. Are you expecting it to move quite quickly?
I think as soon as this international breaks out the way, I think that's when we finally see the ball rolling. I think that's when we probably see if Newcastle United want to fully make a bid. I think that's when it comes. And I think the player himself will make a decision pretty swiftly before he goes and enjoys a little bit of a holiday.
And should Maddison move to Tottenham instead of Newcastle, it has to be dealt in that moment, doesn't it? You go, okay, you move on. There are other targets, there are other players, and you are rest assured that Newcastle do have other players on their radar that can fit into the position Maddison would play.
They've got a plan B, they've got a plan C, 100%. They've been through this before, not just with plenty of players, but actually with James Maddison himself last summer when they really, really pushed to try and get him from Leicester. Leicester wouldn't drop their evaluation. It'll be no different this summer. If Maddison doesn't want to come and he says, I want to stay, I want to go to Tottenham, I think Newcastle will say, right, fair enough, no problem. And I think that'll be it for them. They've tried last summer, they couldn't get it done. They've tried this summer, and they'll move on and they'll find somebody else. There's plenty of options out there to replace him.
And one man that Newcastle showed interest in last week was Nicolò Barella. Instantly, other clubs were then alerted to the potential move. You mentioned on last week's podcast it was going to take something special to persuade him because he's an Inter Milan boyhood fan. They're going really well. Obviously, Champions League final. Why would he leave 50 million as well? Probably wasn't going to cut it at all. Rumours that Chelsea have woken up and they want to sign their 1 millionth midfielder to put in their squad. Sending Romelu Lukaku there permanently as part of a part exchange. I mean, the fact that Newcastle are interested is great, but it has alerted other teams to what potentially could have been a bargain.
Yeah, I think it was always very, very fanciful that Newcastle were going to get a player of Barella's quality for £50 million. Inter Milan, if they didn't want to sell him in the first place, I don't think they're going to be persuaded by 50 million for one of who is, Europe's top midfielders. It's fantastic that Newcastle are showing interest in these type of players, really big names, Champions League finalists, European finalists. But I just think they've maybe picked a fight with the wrong player. Inter Milan, born and bred, a club on the up, as you say. The Inter Milan ultras have came out this weekend and basically said to him, do not sell this man under any circumstances. And I think that pretty much tells you you've got a club that doesn't want to sell. You've got a player who probably doesn't want to leave, and you've got a fan base who are really, really rooting for him to stay. I just think it's maybe just a no-go at the moment.
But we know that the centre midfield is Newcastle United's priority. They want to bring somebody in. So we've got a few names down here that we're going to talk about. We're going to kind of give you the latest and then, a little bit of opinion to why those players may or may not fit into Newcastle's plans and what we think will happen. So we'll continue on Nicolò Barella. If Newcastle United sign him, big statement signing. It's clear why Newcastle United are interested. His pedigree is unbelievable. Really talented midfielder. It would rattle some cages. However, you're probably looking closer to 100 million than you are 50 million. So that's the first sticking point. Second sticking point, as we've mentioned, is he going to leave his boyhood club? Arguably not. And then the third sticking point is, well, if clubs know they can get him for 75, 100 million, other clubs are going to be in for him.
If Newcastle United think they can realistically get it, and I think it's probably not been a good thing that it's leaked into the media. I think they would have much preferred to have done any negotiations behind the scenes so that the likes of Chelsea and I think I've seen Liverpool and other clubs linked as well. It's not only that you've got to persuade Inter Milan and the player, you've now got to beat the likes of Chelsea and Liverpool, who, yes, may not have had a very good season, but they're still huge, huge draws for players on the continent. I just can't see it happening, unfortunately. But as I say, it's a fantastic statement that they're even pushing to get a player of his quality.
Genuinely interested, I think, as well.
And I think, Eddie Howe made it clear. It shouldn't be a surprise. Eddie Howe said, we want elite signings. And I mean, I was taken aback, not at the link, but actually at how shocked Newcastle fans were at the link. It was like, look, don't get me wrong, it would be a huge signing. It would be one of the biggest signings in the history. It would, undoubtedly be their record signing. But I think Newcastle will go out and buy a real marquee signing this summer, and I think they will shock a lot of people by doing it.
And do you think that marquee signing will come because that's what Eddie Howe wants, it's what the team need, or do you think it also might come from a little bit from above Eddie Howe, where they want to make that marquee signing, they want to make a big statement?
I think it will no doubt be a mix of both. I think ultimately it's because Eddie Howe wants to really drag the standard of this team up. He wants players who aren't just going to come in and make the numbers and strengthen the bench. He wants players that are really going to walk into this first team and instantly improve it. And on the other hand, I think PIF will also want to say, look, we've got this money to spend. Let's go out and, really make a statement with it as well.
So marks out of 10 on likelihood of that one?
3 or 4, I'd say.
3 or 4. So there we have it. Right. Next on the list is Tyler Adams from Leeds United, who reports they want £40 million for Tyler Adams. And I think what we will see with Adams, whether it's to Newcastle United or not, I think he will move to the Premier League. I think as the window goes on, like we will with Ward-Prowse, like we will with James Maddison, you will see that number coming down, because £40 million for Tyler Adams seems a little bit extortionate. He's a fantastic player, a young player, great experience. But Leeds have been relegated. He's going to want to get away, so they don't really have that much power. £40 million for him, I think that's too much.
Yeah, it's a big fee for a relegated player. And I'm not saying that just because I got relegated. He was a standout in that Leeds team. But I just think, as you say, if you wait and hang on, Leeds know they're going to have to sell. Tyler Adams does not want to be playing Championship football. I think you'll be able to get that price way, way down.
No, I think he would fit perfectly into that side. I think, as you mentioned many times, he gets his foot stuck in, does the work that maybe goes a little bit unnoticed, plenty of energy about him, can pick a pass. You can get him for 25-30 million. I don't think that's the worst deal in the world.
Not at all. I think you saw last season when he got injured towards the back end of the campaign how much Leeds really missed him. as you've mentioned earlier in previous episodes, he's got Champions League experience. He's played in Europe before. Very, very highly rated when he was at Leipzig. He's been there and done it. I think he'd be a very, very good addition. I think if they can, as you say, if they can just get that price down a bit, he could actually turn out to be a really, really shrewd signing. But I think Newcastle definitely won't be alone in trying to get him.
No, I agree. And I also think he's down the list on the players that they want to bring in that position. I don't think he's at the top of the list. When you look at Barella, for example, I mean, he might be on that BRC list. Doesn't mean he's a bad player. I just don't think if Newcastle had the ability to pick their first choices, I don't think Tyler Adams would be on that list.
No, I agree. But ultimately, I think also they're going to have to spend quite clever, and they can't just go out and buy. They might do it, but I don't think they should just go out and buy two, 50, 60 million pound players and that be done with it. If you get Tyler Adams for 25 million, it's a really, really good deal. And he's saving a bit of money elsewhere.
Christopher says, great player, but he's not worth 40 million. Truel says 40 million for Adams and Maddison is 50. And while Maddison is 50 to 55 million, makes no sense. That Adams should be worth 40 million. Malcolm says, Lavia from Southampton is a better player. He's also on the list that we've got written down here. It was a toss-up between those two.
Lavia for me, purely because of his age. He's got a lot more scope to grow. I think I was really, really surprised when Southampton managed to get him from Manchester City. He'd played a couple of games at City and looked really lively. A very, very good player in the middle of the park in a very poor Southampton team. I just think if you could manage to get a knockdown price for him, I think it would be a really, really good addition.
Johnny says anything over 20 million for Adams is a bit pricey. Good player, but is relatively limited, especially if you can get more talented players from the continent for 30 million pounds or more. Truel says if we go for players like Adams and players of that ilk, we're in trouble next season, which I think is very unfair. And we know, Truels, thank you for being a regular viewer of the podcast. We know you don't like to sign relegated players, but as people have mentioned, not just Adams, there's Lavia as well, who are talented players. I mean, who do you think would be fetching more in the market, Lavia or Adams?
I think Lavia will probably drive a higher price. Again, as I say, just the age of him. I think, I've already seen this week, Arsenal linked. There's probably going to be a battle. I think when you look at that Southampton team that's went down, the two players that stand out in terms of who would be leaving, I think, are Lavia and Ward-Prowse. It's an absolute no-brainer for me. I know that you are an absolute avid Ward-Prowse fan, but I think Lavia's the one player you would take from that team, and he would really improve a lot of Premier League teams.
Such an avid Ward-Prowse fan that I've not actually got him written down on the list.
Well, I'm really surprised by that.
I've been persuaded against him for 50 million pounds. It's not even worth having a conversation about, really. So out of 10, Tyler Adams.
We'll go 5.5.
5.5 for Adams and Lavia. Out of 10,
6.
6.5. 6.5. There we go. And as Johnny's pointed out there, Maddison was relegated with Leicester. So, just because it goes down. Truel says it's not all about relegated players. It's what we've got and what we need to be able to play in 3 cups and the league, which is very true. And they are going to have to build a squad. And that goes back to what you were just saying there. The budget isn't endless at all. So there are going to be some players that they might sign, which might not, excite fans, but it's all done with a plan in mind.
Absolutely. And they need to shop clever. I know there's all this talk about budgets and, high-end elite signings, but ultimately dip into that free agent market, try and get these cut price deals, try and get deals like Nick Pope for 10 million last year. You need to be looking to try and save money. And I think that's what Ashworth and Howe will be doing.
Another Italian linked is Sandro Tonali. How are we feeling about that one?
Do you want to tell me what you called him about 30 minutes ago off air?
I mistakenly called him Bruno.
Bruno what? Tognoli? Is that the Strictly Come Dancing judge? Is that what
you called in jest. Everyone's going to think I'm an idiot. It was said in jest. I'm glad you know who that judge is, though. Sandro Tonali. I've not seen him. I mean, I'll be honest, I've not heard of him, so I'm going to leave that one with you.
Yeah, very, very speculative links. I think potentially maybe coming out of Italy to try and drum up some price for him. Amazing midfielder. He was signed by AC Milan as the next Pirlo. He was really, really highly rated. He plays for Italy week in, week out. But I just think the links are a little bit too speculative. I'm not sure there's much legs to it.
Go on, out of 10.
2.
2 for that one. Darren says the problem with Maddison Norwich will make 15% from the transfer, so Leicester will want as much as they can get out of it, which is a very good point. But also, he hasn't got that much time to run on his deal either, so Leicester have to strike a balance.
Yeah, it's potentially losing him for free next summer or having to really lose him for a cut price in January. I think there's no doubt he'll go this summer. Just depends on the price.
Yeah, indeed. It's going to be one to watch. Now, I have got Kalvin Phillips written down, but instantly I'm just going to say that's just not happening.
Not happening? Don't think so. Is this because of your real firm belief that if players don't want to join, that Newcastle shouldn't look at them, or do you just think he's just not going to come because he doesn't want to come?
I think he doesn't want to come. I think he's got his heart set on making it work at Manchester City. I can totally accept that big money move. You want to be part of it. I also wonder if it's a bit of a gamble as well. The amount of money that they'd want from, plus his injury record. Is he actually match fit? He's missed a large part of the season. And yeah, look, again, Newcastle United are no longer second choice. I think if Eddie Howe comes knocking on your door, you've got to consider it. And I genuinely do think that if players don't jump at the first time of asking, unless they're so key to the strategy and so key to moving forward at Newcastle, they'll move on.
Yeah, I think if this was the Kalvin Phillips at Leeds, I would be saying, no brainer, go and get him, spend whatever they want, bring him in as a top target. Huge question marks over him now because of that fitness. He's hardly played at Man City, couldn't really get in the team. And I think, as you said, I don't think they will let him go on the cheap either. So I'm
going to go 0.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go 2.
I go 0. And the last name I've got written on the list is Onana from Everton, linked a few weeks back. I really, really, really like him. Obviously, Everton staying in the Premier League complicates that slightly more. But he would be, for me, a really solid signing.
If you think Joelinton is a big sort of machine in the middle, then you look at Onana next to him. Jesus, he's a fantastic player. Very, very physical. Will Everton let him go this summer? I don't know. He's only been there a year. Absolutely loved by the fan base. Seems to be quite settled. Had a very good first season. I'm not too sure about that one. He'd be a fantastic signing. I'm just not sure how much legs it's got.
Yeah, I'm going to go for like a 1.
Okay,
that's me being optimistic. So basically, yeah, we're not very optimistic at any of them names.
But I think if I'm completely honest, I think that does sort of sum up what sort of a window it's been so far. There's been a lot of sort of speculative links, not a lot of concrete interest. Eddie Howe's made it clear he's working from a very small pool. All these 6-7 names mentioned, I highly doubt all of them are going to be on their list. But look, the window's already open, and this time last year they already had 2 or 3 pretty much in the door, so they'll be wanting to get a move on.
Yeah, they will do. I mean, other names linked over the weekend. Marco Cucurella from Chelsea, £64 million signing from Brighton, had a terrible, terrible time at it of late at Chelsea. This one is split fans. Now, we know Newcastle are potentially in the market for a fullback to help, obviously, with the Champions League campaign and just offer a bit more than Dan Burn and Matt Target possibly can. Apparently, he's available on a cut price
30
deal.
million.
But for me, look, if you're going to go out and sign a left back who's going to unseat Dan Burn and knock my Target further down the pecking order, it's not Cucurella for me.
This is where we're going to have a first real disagreement of the show, because for me, if Marc Cucurella is really available, as reports over the weekend suggested, for £30 million, I think it's a no-brainer. If you sign Marc Cucurella and you get anywhere near what he was like at Brighton, you're on to a winner.
But why hasn't it worked at Chelsea? I know they've been in an awful position, but surely he still should be performing at a level which persuaded them to buy him for that price in the first.
Look, Graham Potter worked wonders with him at Brighton, and obviously then went and paid big money for him at Chelsea. Looking at what Chelsea were like at St James's Park back in October, November, when Graham Potter was still in charge and they got beat, he tinkered with that team 4 or 5 times in play. he was moving Cucurella. I don't even know if Cucurella played that game, but for example, you had Lewis Hall was playing left wing back, then he was playing centre midfield, then he was swapping to a back four. There was no, I think, any Chelsea player last season, you can just write off the season. They weren't at their best. The club were in crisis. I think Cucurella would be a really interesting deal, and I would really, really like to see him at St James's Park if we can get a deal done.
Truel says I would take Cucurella. He was great at Brighton, and how we'll get him going again. And Johnny shoots me down. He says it's a similar argument to signing relegated players. If we were trying to sign him after his last season at Brighton, it's a great signing. So I guess people will say you look at the way Joelinton's come on, the way Miguel Almiron's come on, to a certain extent, the way Dan Burns come on, you say Eddie Howe will just work his magic again.
If I'm completely honest, you look at Cucurella, he was very, very good in Spain. He came to the Premier League, slotted in straight away, and he's only really had one bad season. And it was a season where he's probably playing the left of a back three where I don't think he fits. Playing in a back five probably doesn't suit him. I think allow him to play at left back, go forward. He offers a lot more than Burn going forward. I think he would be really, really good. It just depends whether this Mirror report of the weekend of the £30 million is true, but I would really, really like him.
Phillips says Cucurella was unreal at Brighton. How would turn him back into a great player? 20-30 million for him is a steal, in my opinion. Chelsea were just not very good last season, and they made him one of the fall guys. Between him and Tierney, who would you be going for?
Cucurella.
Over Tierney?
Yeah, much better fitness record. Don't get us wrong, I like Tierney, but and they offer, probably similar amounts going forward, but I just think Cucurella, I think, would be a really, really exciting signing.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because for many, many months, it's been all about Tierney, and people in the club, Tierney's people, very confident this deal is going to happen. Do you think they've moved on from that?
Look, as far as I'm aware, I spoke about this last week. The last time I spoke to somebody about it, there was confidence on both sides that it was going to get done. Obviously, Scotland are currently on international duty as well. I'm not too sure. I think a lot of it depends on the player. Arsenal, as we know, are trying to sort of clear the books a little bit to sort of bolster their transfer kitty. I think a lot of it depends on what Arsenal do themselves, incoming wise. But yeah, as I say, the last time I sort of heard about it, there was confidence from Newcastle.
Roger says, I agree with you there, Aaron. If Cucurella was anywhere near the Brighton form plus Eddie Howe magic, he'd be brilliant. Truel says Tierney is too injury prone. I don't think we will get a left back, but she hopes that she's wrong. I mean, the two positions, as far as we are aware, are a midfielder, central midfielder, and a left back. I expect them to get both.
I think if you look at the starting 11 and think where can this Newcastle team be improved, I think you look at left back, and that's no disrespect to Dan Burn. I just think you maybe want someone who's a natural left back rather than a centre back in that position. Even though the midfield has been fantastic this season, I think you would look at it and say, get someone who's a deep line midfielder and let Bruno go forward. And yeah, maybe if you're then being greedy, you look at another attacker and maybe a sort of a backup for Share. But I think, as you said, the two positions they really will want to go and strengthen are in midfield and at left back.
Now, the other big name that came out over the weekend was that of Sadio Mané, falling out of favour by Munich. Obviously, did so well at Liverpool, brilliant Southampton. Prior to that, was asked about whether he would join Newcastle by a jury lord in some sort of meeting somewhere, wherever it was, and he said, never say never. Now, a lot of people have taken that as Mané saying, yeah, I'm going to move to Newcastle. I suspect he knows exactly what he's doing with that comment. Why would you shut it down? Whether it's you angling for a deal somewhere else, it would do you no good at all just to say, nah, I'm not interested. Let's look at it from the Newcastle United point of view. I mean, that would break the wage structure, which we know they don't want to do. However, it is a statement signing. It is a quality signing. Yes, he's 31, is he?
I think so.
So he's probably above the age bracket where maybe you break the wage structure for. However, does he do what Newcastle United are after for a couple of seasons and elevate them to the next level?
I don't think there'd be many Newcastle United fans, me included. I don't think I would ever say no to Sadio Mané. I think you just got to look at what he did at Liverpool. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Signed last season by Bayern, 35 million, 3-year deal. He's obviously got 2 years left to run. I can't see it happening. I just think the money involved to pay him every week, he would break that wage structure and then some. It just maybe depends of is he prepared? Is he so desperate to leave Bayern that he takes a pay cut? If he is, he's probably going to have suitors elsewhere, and not to say Newcastle aren't a big enough draw, but I think if Sadio Mané's on the market, you're going to probably get 10 or 12 teams that say, right, we want them. So again, I can't really see it happening.
Andrew Bless says, I'd go for Mané, add some Champions League experience. Roger says, 350,000 per week, reportedly. No Mané for him. Johnny says, Mané is outside the profile. We are looking at one of the world's best with 30 plus and will earn considerably more than all the other players. I think that alone is probably why it won't happen.
Yeah.
You could end up getting him on a free potentially if Bayern just want to get rid of him. But the wage that he would command, unless he takes a pick, as you say, you just write that one off, don't you?
Yeah, I just don't think it's a deal that they're going to get. I think it was very, very honourable of the Geordie Lord. I think he was in Senegal when he bumped into him and asked the question, but I think maybe Mané was just being a bit polite when he said, never say never.
The Mighty Win says, Tierney is nowhere near as injury prone, which seems to be the general consensus, but I still prefer Cucurella or Joan Miranda. So that's one to watch. A few of things to talk about then. The season tickets were announced last week. Renewals open today for fans. A bit of a price rise in certain areas, 5% for some. Juniors are frozen, long-term deals are frozen. Some people aren't very happy. Some people said, well, it's the price of success. And when you look around at other clubs, Aaron, it's not that big of a price hike, is it?
This is the big thing for me. I think on the face of it, a 5% rise for season tickets, fans are going to think, oh, well, it's a lot in these times. But I think you've only got to look, as you say, around the country. Nottingham Forest bumping theirs up 20%, Fulham 18%, Villa, Everton, Brighton, all in double figures in terms of their price rises. I think for someone like Fulham, it works out at like £150 per game. When you put it into context like that, I don't think a 5% rise is too bad. I think, as you say, it's the price of success. I know in an ideal world, because of who the owners are, they would maybe go a bit easier on finances. But the amount of changes they're making behind the scenes, the amount of money they're spending, they need to improve that match day revenue, and this is the way to do it.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of you guys who are fortunate to have season tickets already. I'm just reading a comment here. Let me just read it before I put it on the screen. Yeah. Johnny says, it's a disgrace. Everyone with season tickets should boycott, not renew, and I promise not to get one myself. Yeah, very good there. I think that's been kind of the reaction from many people, isn't it? If you don't want to go, I'll take your ticket. But look, it was always going to upset some because, times are tough, aren't they? But I think the club probably have done their very best to try and limit the rise. And I'm sure that when this deadline hits on the 5th of July, you will see next to no tickets available for general sales. Such is the demand.
Yeah.
We wanted to talk about Ruben Neves moving to Saudi Arabia. Now, Neves was linked to a move to Newcastle. I think they did cast an eye over him at some point over the last year. 26, a fantastic player. He's moved to Saudi Arabia, obviously. Big money deal. I think it's £47 million, something like that. He'll be getting a bump back wage as well. I texted you yesterday when I read that, and I was just like, for me, I just don't get it. It's a brilliant move for Saudi football because it's a youngish player who's got a big reputation coming to their league, and that will help boost the profile. It's a good move for him from a financial side, really good wage packet there, secures his financial future with his family and what have you. But surely, if you're ambitious, it wasn't too long ago he was angling for a move to Barcelona.
It's a really, really weird one with Neves because you've got this player who captained Porto, the youngest ever captain in the Champions League at 18. This huge player that everybody in Europe wanted. He joins Wolves in the Championship, as part of that big Portuguese drive. He was one of the first Portuguese players to go over there. And then I don't know, this big move, this big stepping stone move from Wolves just hasn't materialised. Every summer you hear about him leaving, Manchester United want him, Newcastle want him, Barcelona want him, and it's just never happened. And I can't really understand why, given how good he is. Look, if somebody came to me and said, we'll offer you £250,000 a week, it's very, very hard to say no to, but I get your sentiment. He's 26. He's coming up with prime. He could probably pay it pretty much any Premier League club. It's a very, very disappointing move, but I just think it's also very, very hard to turn that money down for some people. And it's like you say, him and his family are set now for life. Even if he goes over there for 2 years and comes back to England or Europe at 28. But as you say, it's a bit of a weird one.
And on the back of that story, claims that the Public Investment Fund have a minority stake in a company called Clearlake, who, now to get this right, are the company that helped with the Chelsea takeover.
Yeah, I think it's Chelsea's. Chelsea's pretty much predominant main source of funding comes from Clearlake. Todd Bowley's clearly involved. Clearlake have consistently denied that there was any Saudi involvement in the takeover. But there is reports, speculation that allegedly this, PIF pumped significant money into Clearlake. In return, now you see, Lukaku, Kante, Mendy, Ziyech, all these players linked with moves to Saudi Arabia, which is definitely raising some eyebrows.
I think a lot of people have said, they've invested in a company who have then gone and bought Chelsea. It's different because, some people are saying, does that mean they're involved in Chelsea, which wouldn't be allowed in the rules. So I think that's the difference people are getting at. We're still looking into it fully. But yeah, you've mentioned there the names who have been linked to big money moves from Chelsea to Saudi Arabia. And a lot of people are asking, well, isn't that directly funding a competitor? I guess from the Saudi Arabian point of view, they're all about boosting their league's profile. And that's, in many ways, we've talked about the separation issue for months and months and months. The argument would be, well, they're separate. So the Saudi league can do what they want, and how that benefits or goes against Newcastle doesn't really matter because that's a separation, right?
Yeah, and look, PIF, on the face of it, have absolutely no involvement with Chelsea. They don't own any stakes in Chelsea. They don't really have anything to do with Chelsea. There is obviously just this maybe little grey area, which if we all of a sudden start to see, big names from Chelsea leaving to go to Saudi football, there might maybe be a little conflict of interest. The Saudis will say, look, we're just trying to boost our league. We've got Benzema, we've got Ronaldo. We just want to add significant talent. And it looks like they're going to, by the way. I think by the end of the summer, we'll see a huge amount of names now playing in the Saudi top flights. Like it, I love it. I think it's going to happen. Will it be similar to China all the years ago? I'm not too sure. Be interesting to see though.
Yeah, it will certainly be one to watch. We're going to finish off on some trivia. Are you ready? And I'm going to help Aaron out here. So let me just share my screen a moment. Let's see if this works. So we've got an Oracle quiz. Hopefully you can see that on the screen. All right, let me just go down. Get rid of these adverts. Right, so the quiz is, so for you guys who are watching live, do help out. Newcastle United's top Premier League scores A to Z. Can you name Newcastle United's top scoring Premier Leagues per initial? We've got 4 minutes and there's 26, obviously, because that's the number of people in the alphabet.
Okay.
Shall we go?
Yeah.
So we'll start with
A.
We'll just go through Rishi, all right?
Okay.
Right. Ferdinand?
Yeah. A will be Amiobi.
Wilson? Carroll? Oh, Carroll, Beardsley. What would have been B? Right. C. 43. Probably goals. I've been blind at Cool, man. Obviously,
Cool.
man. Lee must be. Yeah, you help out anytime you like, Aaron. X. Oh, Cisco.
Cisco with one.
There's a man from the blast from the past. No, none for you. Let's see what people in the comments are saying here. Cool. Yeah, everyone's shouting cool. We've got him.
Cool,
yeah.
Amiobi.
Niall says Kabaya. It's not. It's cool. Let's go back on then. Ginola, potentially. No. 11.
G.
Buffon. Surely not. Ooh.
And Gillespie.
Keith Gillespie,
Gale,
Johan
of course.
Gouffran, and Dwight Gale. E. Now let's start. $23 goals, D. Not Dumbia.
Certainly not Dumbia.
I'm joking before
Or
anyone
Debussy.
writes in. J-E-I-I-I. I can't be.
8.
Trying to think. We've got a P. 33. P. Peacock didn't get 33, did he? Oh, go back in. Duga. We've got B. We'll try with Duga. There we go.
Shout,
7.
yeah.
Well done. T. 12. Oh, we're not doing very well, yeah,
Might have
we?
been Thomason, would it?
Island. How are you?
Someone saying Emre.
Emre, let's have a shout. No.
E11.
We're doing awful
23.
here. Let's try the left wings. Is Robert going to be the R? Robert could be the R, you know.
Yeah, maybe.
There we go.
Well
Oh.
the D might be Dyer.
Kieran Dyer, though. Elliot. Was it double T,
No.
maybe? Oh, there's
Oh,
Robbie
wow.
Elliott, 11 goals. Right, H, 4. And each. Does that asterisk mean they're still playing a day?
What's the M? Martins?
Mortons, it must be, mustn't it? Yeah. H. I'm going to run out of time here. This is shocking.
Y. Yedlin?
Yedlin. Oh, I take it back. I take that back.
He only scored 2. I think that was a decent guess. P. J. Genus?
Nope.
No.
Oh, nah, I'm stumped. Owen, no.
Yeah, it might be Owen.
As Owen, we're not going to know. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry. I thought we'd done 26. N. I's going. I can't believe we haven't got an A.
Still playing now. J. Joelinton.
20 seconds. We're not going to get all these, are we?
No.
We failed you.
20 out of 26.
Kitson,
Well done. 21 out of 26.
Still playing now.
T.
H.
That's it. Tie you up.
Nah. Oh, Perez, Nolan,
Isaac. Oh, my God.
Isaac. Oh, I'm so sorry, Alexander.
Stephen
Taylor, 12 goals. So there we have it for those listening. From A to Z, Shola Miobi on 43, Peter Beardsley 47, Lanny Cole 43, Kieran Dyer 23, Robbie Elliott 11, Les Finn on 41, Keith Gillespie, Gouffran Gale on 11, Hughes, Harmon, Hayden on 4, Isaac on 8, Joelinton, Kitson on 10, Rob Lee on 34, Obafemi Martins on 28, Nolan on 12, Owen on 26, Perez on 33, no one on Q, Robert 22, Shearer 148, Stephen Taylor 12, no one on you, Mark Viduka 7, Callum Wilson 20, Cisco 1, DeAndre Yedlin 2, and no one on Z. Me now and got 21 out of 26. I am thoroughly disappointed at that.
Disappointed in the ones we missed. Isaac, Nolan, Perez.
Oh, do you know what? The point was that I tried to put it on the screen. I forgot I even had it on the screen. That's why no one could see it. I do apologize. Next week, we'll have it on the screen full time. I assumed it would automatically just have added. But yeah, there we go. There it is on the screen. I'll put the link in the comments to where this quiz was. There you go, guys. Yeah. Next week, we're going to have to do better than that.
Yeah.
But for the meantime, this has been the Everything is Black and White podcast. We do appreciate you guys tuning in. Hit that subscribe button if you're watching live on YouTube, or hit that follow button on your podcast provider and leave us a rating and review. And from myself and Aaron, we'll be back. We'll be back later this week, actually, because we've got a special episode, haven't we?
Yeah.
So tomorrow, Tuesday, we're going to be recording with some well-known Newcastle United podcasters and YouTubers. We're going to get them to take part in our end-of-season big survey, and we're really looking forward to that one. That will be out on Tuesday evening. It'll be live. Well, it'll be played out on YouTube on Wednesday morning. So look out for that one. And we've got another Let's Talk About episode later this week as well about farm parks. We've had one about Anthony Gordon gone up over the weekend, so hit up that. But yeah, for the meantime, look after yourself, guys, and we'll be back later this week.